What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with a Texas judge explains the scoring of the Don'Tale Mayes fight. UFC 277 had some unforgettable moments. One fight that took place during the prelims is now taking the spotlight. The fight was between Hamdi Abdelwahab and Don'Tale Mayes. During the broadcast, color commentator Joe Rogan alongside Jon Anik and Daniel Cormier stated that one of the judges, Seth Fuller, needed to be talked to and checked to see what he's on after presenting his 29-28 scorecard for Mayes, different from the other judges who scored it 29-28 for Abdelwahab, who ended up getting the split decision victory. In a 28-minute video on YouTube, Fuller spoke at length about the scoring process, some past transgressions he's had in terms of betting on fighting, and also his thought process for this specific fight between Hamdi Abdelwahab and Don'Tale Mayes. Fuller stated that the two heavyweights were pretty much even, in his eyes, going into the final moments of the third round, which is when he believes Mayes pulled ahead by throwing a punching combination in the stand-up and weighing that more than the cage control of Abdelwahab. Ultimately, Fuller went on to refute what Rogan had stated during the broadcast by saying this.
Two other judges obviously disagreed, and I have no problem with that. But I just want you to show you I'm not an idiot. I'm not bad at scoring. I don't not know what I'm looking at. I do know what I'm looking at, and in fact, I would say that I know the rules that I just read to you better than the announcers, because the announcers just went through the course that I went through 12 years ago, and their scores were all over the place.
Recently, there was a judging and referee seminar held by the Association of Boxing Commissions, where a few rule changes were made in terms of clothing and what not to wear. But attendees were also asked to sign a code of conduct pledge that bars negative public comments towards officials and wagering on fights, which is when he admitted to having bet on the Ronda Rousey-Holly Holm fight all the way back at UFC 193. Still, what do you think of this whole thing? It's official. Sam Alvey and the UFC part ways. Sam Alvey's last fight took place last weekend at UFC Vegas 59, and it was a TKO loss at the hands of Michal Oleksiejczuk. The loss turned out to be Alvey's 9th straight in the UFC, which is now a record in the promotion. It's certainly not the way that Alvey wanted to go out, but he does leave with a historic record. He stated that he wasn't going to be re-signing with the organization after this fight, and that the organization had also indicated they were going to part ways with him. This ends the Smile Sam era in the UFC. He's talked about possibly joining the WWE after this. However, he also reshared a meme that was going around after the fight on his Instagram page, with a caption that read, "Y'all didn't let me down. Couple of these had me rolling. Hey Jake Paul, I'm not under contract anymore." Alvey suffered a broken jaw in this weekend's loss to Oleksiejczuk, so he'll likely be out for a few months before he can even begin to entertain the idea of fighting again. Alvey's last win was all the way back in June of 2018 when he beat Gian Villante by a split decision, and he has notable wins over Rashad Evans and Nate Marquardt in his 8-year UFC career. What do you think about Alvey leaving the UFC? Taila Santos responds to accusations that she stiffed coaches and a manager. Alright, there's a lot here, so let's get into it. There are 3 separate people accusing UFC flyweight and former title challenger Taila Santos of not paying them. The first is Marcelo Brigadeiro, her former head coach and manager, who has been part of her team since her second fight in 2014. The two parted ways over a year ago, and he claims they agreed to have her still pay him a percentage of her last 3 fights against Roxanne Modafferi in September of last year, Joanne Wood in November of 2021, and the Valentina Shevchenko title fight in June of this year. While he hasn't outright filed a lawsuit, he said he'd do so in the coming weeks. In response to those claims, Santos issued a statement saying their deal was, quote, abusive, and that she's filed a lawsuit against Brigadeiro, claiming she couldn't even read the contract, and that he took advantage of her because of her poor education. She accused Brigadeiro of booking her against another fighter that he managed in 2021, and turning down a replacement. She's seeking just under $5,000 in damages from him. Then we have Marcio Malco, who actually coached her over the last 3 fights previously mentioned. Malco has filed a lawsuit against her and stated he wasn't paid for the training camps to prepare for the Modafferi and Wood fights, and also was not paid for coaching her against Shevchenko in June, and he's seeking about $36,400 from her. In response to that, Santos once again stated that this deal was also, quote, abusive, and that she was coerced to agreeing to paying the amount because she was in financial dire straits. and claimed that he's making false accusations. She allegedly agreed to pay him $5,200 instead of the more than $36,000 that he's seeking. Then finally we have Patricio Barboza Farias, a BJJ brown belt and Santos' brother-in-law, as he's the brother of her husband. He claims he was left in debt to the tune of just under $3,000 after he moved to the city that she was in to be part of the team and simply was never paid. Santos says her husband reached out to Patricio to help him out and get him a job as a BJJ coach since he was driving an Uber in another city and was being paid for it, and he'd even been paid for helping construct a new training center. What do you make of this whole situation? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on all the latest fight news. Rose Namajunas reveals what it would take to move up to fight friend Valentina Shevchenko. Rose Namajunas is not planning on going back to training full-time until about September, after losing her strawweight title to Carla Esparza earlier this year at UFC 274 in May. The fight was widely considered to be a stinker and simply not that interesting after the girls recorded the lowest amount of strikes for a UFC title fight. Esparza won by split decision, although both women received a ton of criticism for their performances. Still, the former two-time strawweight champion, Rose, she's simply biding her time until she's able to get back into the octagon. She's contemplating her next move, part of which is to simply see what will take place when Esparza defends her title against #1 contender Zhang Weili, a fight which has yet to have an official date. But Namajunas is looking at all of her options, and while she doesn't expressly say she would move up to flyweight, it's something that she is contemplating. If she does, there will be one opponent with whom she's very familiar with, and that's flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko. The two women are friends and have trained with one another for several weeks in the past, helping each other prepare for their bouts in their respective divisions. But Rose isn't ruling out the possibility of fighting Valentina. Case in point, this is what she said during an interview with MMA Fighting's Mike Heck.
Yes, because like I love Valentina. I think I consider her to be my friend, and so like that is something that I never really had a problem with, being cordial and things like that with people that I was gonna fight and everything like that.
The money has to be right for Rose to take on Valentina, who has been a dominant force in the 125-pound female division. It's unclear if Rose will simply come back to strawweight and challenge some of the top contenders, or even fight for a title again. For now, she's taking things in stride, while also looking to compete in grappling super fights if those opportunities are on offer. What do you think of Rose's comments here about potentially fighting Valentina? Paulo Costa leaves Waleed Ismail and is now represented by his girlfriend. First Deiveson Figueiredo, and now Paulo Costa. It seems Brazilian MMA manager and jiu-jitsu legend Waleed Ismail is not able to keep his cozy relationship with some of Brazil's top fighters. Costa recently revealed in a YouTube video on his channel that he's parted ways with his longtime manager Ismail, just weeks before he's set to take on Luke Rockhold at UFC 278 later this month. The fight had been postponed and delayed a few times, and hopefully this time, the middleweight clash will actually happen. But concerning Ismail, this is what Costa stated in his video in Portuguese. "I have nothing bad to say about Waleed. He's an honest person and very professional. I just have compliments about him. We just have different views about my career, and because of that, we decided to not work together anymore." Later in the video, Costa stated that his girlfriend, Tamara Alves, will now be representing him in dealings with the UFC, sponsors, and anyone else who wants to employ his services. It comes just 2 months after Figueiredo, the undisputed UFC flyweight champion, parted ways with Ismail over disagreements related to the UFC creating an interim flyweight title as he makes his recovery from a recent injury. The last time we saw Costa was last October, when he lost to Marvin Vettori by a unanimous decision in a catchweight fight. What do you think about Costa parting ways with Waleed Ismail and naming his girlfriend as his manager? And who's your favorite in the upcoming Costa vs Rockhold matchup at UFC 278? Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.